What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another video, and in this video I'm going to be giving you guys my predictions for rookie roles, just drafted players for the 2020 NFL season. Let's get it started. Alright, now before we get into the video, let me just point out a few things. First off, let me give a shout out to my guy Jay Clark Comedy. You know, you put out a little parody of me, and it was fire. I'll give you that. You killed it. However, you would have had it perfect. It would have been, it would have been right down to the wire perfect. If you would have had the outro, man. If you just said thank you, Pride, for watching and I'm out, I would have lost it. But up to that point, man, it was fire. It was good. I liked it. That was pretty funny, so I appreciate that. Also, my red dot on my head. Okay, look, I don't know if it's over here anymore. I think it's over here. I don't know. Anyways, it's a red dot on my head, and some people are like, hey, what is that? Look, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's pretty stupid, to be honest with you. Okay, here's what happened. Basically, I got one of these. You see this? You probably already know what happened. Some of you probably already know. Anyways, it's like a little thing you stick on the back of your phone, right? I got one of these for free yesterday, and, you know, I'm just messing with it, and I go like this. And I pop it to my head, and I pull it off. Not thinking it would make a red circle on my head. Nope, made a complete red circle. So, now I got a red circle. Don't do that with these blue sucky things. It's a whale, by the way. Anyways, let's talk about these rookie roles. So let's get this thing started with the Lions' first pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. Detroit Lions select Jeffrey Okudah, the cornerback out of Ohio State. Now, I think Jeffrey Okudah starts as a number 1 or number 2 corner. Either way, I really don't see him being any lower than that. We're talking about ceilings and floors as well. I don't think his floor is any lower than that this season, realistically. Now, again, this is just for 2020. Keep that in mind. And I think his ceiling is a number 1 corner. I just think he's number 1, number 2. You draft a player with the 3rd pick in the draft, his impact has to be top-notch. I really, realistically, cannot see him being any lower than number 2 cornerback on our depth chart unless something crazy happens or Monty just turns into an absolute beast. Something. I have no idea. So anyways, that's where I think his role is. That one's kind of simple, short, and sweet. So let's just get on to the next one. Next up, we have DeAndre Swift, the running back out of Georgia, who we selected with pick number 35, our first pick in the 2nd round. And DeAndre Swift is a very talented running back that mixed carries with guys at Georgia as well. He wasn't just a premier back, just a feature back that just carried all the attempts. He didn't do that. He's with a lot of other good running backs, and I think that's exactly what he does with the Detroit Lions. You know, I don't see the Detroit Lions having a feature back where there's, you know, they get 90% of the carries. I think they mix with whoever else is back there, and I think DeAndre Swift's mixes with Kerryon Johnson. I think his ceiling is that mix, and I think his floor is somehow, some way, him not being the number 1 or number 2 running back. I don't know how that could happen. Maybe if Huntley balls out or Ty Johnson or something, it kind of takes that role. But I think, you know, if I had to predict, which I'm predicting he's going to be a rotational running back with Kerryon Johnson as the starter. And I think Kerryon's going to have a big year, so don't sleep on him. Next up, we have Julian Okwara, the edge rusher that we selected out of Notre Dame, or as I should say, the Jack role. I think Julian Okwara is the Jack role for the 2020 season. I think he is the next Jack linebacker because last season, if you can remember, it was Devon Kennard, and we cut him. And it was kind of surprising that we cut him. It was kind of a weird thing, too. Like, they traded him, and then they didn't trade him. They cut him. So they cut him, kind of surprising. He couldn't really drop back in coverage, though, and that was one big thing. And he was just a solid pass rusher. He had a lot of sacks, but that's kind of all he did. And that's what Julian Okwara was known for at Notre Dame. To me, it's a perfect fit. He can rush the passer very, very well. Some people think he's a first-round talent. His brother's on the team, so he's going to compete with him. There's going to be a lot of, you know, feistiness going on there. They both could be on the field at the same time sometimes. And, you know, I think he can drop back a little bit. Run defense a little bit concerning, but I do think he starts at the Jack role. I think his ceiling is starting at the Jack role, and I think his floor is being bench defensive end, or not defensive end, bench edge rusher behind a guy like maybe Austin Bryant takes over the Jack role, because he was someone that I thought might until they drafted Julian Okwara. Then, you know, not anymore. Maybe Reggie Ragland goes over there. Maybe Jared Davis moves over there. Or heck, maybe even Jamin Collins does that, even though I don't think he will. So that's kind of my prediction for Julian Okwara. Next up, we have Jonah Jackson, our 2nd third-round pick that we traded up to select. And this is the guard out of Ohio State, who is known as maybe one of the most polished offensive linemen in this draft. A lot of offensive linemen had a lot of good things: athleticism, power, strength, crazy statistics, pancakes, whatever it may be, but a lot of them weren't super polished. They always had big cons, and they had major cons. And Logan Stenberg has those, who we'll talk about in a second, but Jonah Jackson didn't really have too many of those. This guy was very consistent, polished, only allowed 1 sack in all of his years in college for Rutgers and Ohio State. One of the best pass protectors, which we need. We had the run blockers. We need pass protectors. I think he starts at right guard like he did at Rutgers. If I talk about a ceiling and floor, I think his ceiling is starting, obviously, and I think his floor is necessarily being a guy that is a bench or a backup to a guy like Ode Ibushi or Joshua Garnett. However, I really don't see that happening. I think he starts at right guard day one. So up to this point, all of these guys are getting starting minutes. However, that changes now with Logan Stenberg, the guard out of Kentucky. Now, I think Logan Stenberg can be a starter and will be a starter at some point, just not right away. I think it starts a season where he's mainly like a rotational guy with Joe Dahl. Last season it was Joe Dahl and Kenny Wiggins who rotated. Joe Dahl did get more of the carries towards the end did get more of the snaps near the end of the season, statistically. So I think that may be the kind of the same story with Logan Stenberg, where, roles kind of flip. Logan Stenberg and Dahl rotate, and I think maybe, later in the season when Logan Stenberg becomes, maybe more polished, doesn't have the crazy cons like all the penalties, because you can't have that many penalties and play in the NFL, and I think he'll start that left guard because he has all the traits to be a monster. He just got some major cons. So I think he will at some point start left guard, just not right away. Maybe they'll rotate at left guard because they do have a lot of solid guards that are good for run blocking. So that's kind of what I'm predicting for Logan Stenberg. Next up, Quintez Cephus, wide receiver out of Wisconsin. Now, I think Quintez Cephus is our number 5 wide receiver this season. I think he just makes the cut. I think last season we had 5 wide receivers at our final 53-man roster. But there are 2 more players that you can have on the active roster, I believe, this season. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure where they're going to use it. I'm assuming on defense, but I'm not sure. So maybe offensive line. We got a lot of linemen. Or even running back. So I think, Quintez Cephus is our 5th wide receiver. I think he makes the team. I think he's behind Marvin Hall and Danny Amendola, and obviously Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones Jr. I think his ceiling is being, possibly the number 4 wide receiver ahead of Marvin Hall to start the season. I think at some point he may be there anyways. And I think maybe even starting at slot. And I think his floor is necessarily being, maybe practice squad. That would be as lowest he could get. But I do think somehow he's with the Lions technically. Next up, we have Jason Huntley, the other pick we took in this round, and that is running back out of New Mexico State. Now, Jason Huntley, to me, is going to be our kick returner, maybe punt returner. I think kick returner, and I think he's somewhat of rotational, just a little bit of rotates, just a little bit of, the rotation at the running back spot, maybe a couple snaps at the slot spot if we're doing some trick plays or something, maybe some of that, maybe Wildcat, I have no idea. But I think that will be his role. I think his floor is, again, practice squad, guy that really doesn't have a lot of tries and really doesn't start a kick returner or punt returner because Agnew does and Amendola does. And I think his ceiling is starting kick returner, possibly starting punt returner, and having a solid rotation, maybe as the 3rd running back in our running back depth chart. Next up, John Penisini, the defensive lineman out of Utah. Now, this is the defensive tackle who's kind of like a one-down tackle. I think he'll be out there for early downs to stop the run because that's what he was in college. He was known for stopping the run. I loved this pick with the value, but I think his role is going to be a rotational interior defensive lineman with Danny Shelton. I think Nick Williams has the ability to kind of, move out a little bit if he has to. So I think So I think Penisini is kind of more of that interior defensive lineman depth. I think his floor is being a guy that's on the practice squad. Again, I don't see him not being on the team at all. Practice squad is my floor. And I think his ceiling is possibly being the number 2 defensive tackle this season. Maybe the starter. I'm going to say number 2 DT because I think Shelton does start without a doubt. And then my final player is our 7th round pick, Jayshon Cornell, the defensive lineman out of Ohio State. Defensive tackle / defensive end. He can do a little bit of both, which definitely helps him. Keep in mind, our 7th round pick last season, was it last season when we selected PJ Johnson? He didn't even make the team. And that's a little bit concerning. So he definitely has a lot against him here. I think he does make the team because he can do a couple of different things. I just don't know if he gets really any snaps at all this season. I think his ceiling is being in the rotation. That would be great for him as a 7th round pick. And I think his floor is, practice squad to not even being on the practice squad. So there you go. Let me hear your thoughts, comments below. Let me hear your roles. Thank you, Prop, for watching.